Hello everyone, it's Michelle Patterson here with Angel Souls, and today, finally, I am releasing a video on Ascension. Now the reason why I say finally is because there's so many of these Ascension videos out there, and for years my viewers have been asking for me to bring this forward. Now, I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. I am an angel medium. If you're new to my channel, hi and welcome. And essentially what that means, I'm not doing a psychic reading. I'm not tuning into dark entities. Are you kidding me? I'd be like the first one out the door if one of those start creeping around me. No, it's spooky. I don't want to do that. I work with the angels and the archangels. So I'm going to basically tune in after I give a little base information here, and we'll see what they want us to know about Ascension. So the videos you might have already seen on this, it's very popular on YouTube, and it's actually a tool. It's kind of recommended for YouTube creators to create listed videos. So 5 ways that you know you're going through Ascension, 5 symptoms for Ascension, 5 ways to manage Ascension. And I'm not saying that those videos are bad, and I would encourage you to go watch those because that actually gives you, sort of the Cliff's Notes about Ascension. But certainly it should not end there. Ascension, as I said in one of my weeklies, Ascension is not a list that you check off and then you get to go through the secret golden door. All right, that's not how this is. You're going to be setting yourself up for disappointment if you think it's going to be that cut and dry. It's messy, it's free-flowing, it's organic. We'll talk about it. But remember, your ascension process, more than anything, is meant to be experienced. So it's more important that you give yourself room to experience it instead of worrying about, am I following the right steps? Am I doing all the right stuff? Again, we'll touch on some of this information here, but please don't let your ego convince you to get impatient with your ascension process, or think that life is formulaic. It is not. It is vibrational. And that is where a lot of us historically have gotten hung up in our lives. That's part of the thing that gets us stuck. We forget ourselves. We forget that by tuning up our frequency, by heading in a different direction with our intentions. And that doesn't mean just thinking about it. It's not mind over matter. It's your entire being lining up with that. First of all, it feels like a vacation. All right. And it can be a little hard to get realigned when you have an upsetting experience and all of that. But if you can, again, have patience with yourself and not take on this approach in your life like it's a checklist, then you'll have a moment of, okay, I don't have all the answers right now, but I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to do a cleansing meditation maybe. Or I'm just going to sit with some beautiful music and just breathe. You don't have to go through any sort of visualization meditation. There are plenty of approaches and tools for Ascension. Now, having said that, Ascension is big business. Is that necessarily bad? It walks a fine line. It certainly does. I'm not saying that people should not be compensated for their time. No way, shape, or please. This is what I do for a living. This is how I pay my bills. Of course, this is hard work. It may not seem like much, but it took a long time to put this makeup on, okay? But just kidding. Not really, actually. It did take a long time, but I don't really care is what I'm saying. Anyway, so Ascension is big business. So people have their entire businesses built on, I'm going to help you ascend, ascension reports, all that stuff. And actually, I find that it depends on the person doing it, and again, their intention, but I find that kind of nice. But at the same time, when it comes to Ascension, yes, there is a collective ascension. Yes, there could be a collective energy. But when you're listening to Ascension reports, right, you have to remember that you're an individual within the whole. So you're going to have your own stuff going on. You can't necessarily listen to what's going to happen, not just listen to what's going to happen to everybody else and assume that's going to be you. Does that make sense? Okay. So what the heck are we talking about? You're probably like, Michelle, go back. What is Ascension? Ascension is rising up, which is, moving on up, right? Which is almost kind of, it's not misnamed, because we are kind of raising our frequency. We're raising our vibration. But now we've been at this long enough, years enough, that we can tell what the heck people are doing with it. And it's not good. It's not always good. I'm ascending. Moving on up isn't literally like the Jeffersons where, now you get to have the big penthouse and the car, and that makes you better than everybody else, right? Ascension is on your own time frame. okay? You will have moments of backsliding. See, it's another big thing that I think people don't really understand. They think, oh, I'm on the path. And again, you get to go through that golden door. You get your golden nugget at the door. There's going to be a little surprise inside. I don't know, like the secrets of the universe. And I never have to go back. I never have to learn any lessons. If that were the case, you would pop out of your physical body. You wouldn't even need to be on this earth plane anymore. What we're essentially doing here is coming into awareness and trying to find our way back to God. That's really, to me, what ascension is, finding your way back to God, okay? And even as I say that, that's not, let me go further with that. So finding your way back to God doesn't mean you're throwing your energy outside of you, because God is God, source, creator, whatever, the universe, whatever you call it. That somehow God, source, creator, the universe is outside of you and you have to strive and, you're so less than, and you know what I'm saying? There's some broken parts of the bridge trying to get to it in that manner. But this is finding that you are really truly connected to source and always have been, right? So that's kind of the idea of ascension. Again, everybody has their approach to it. I'm just giving you mine and what the angels want to bring forward for each of you to know. Now, when it comes to ascension, I typically work with Archangel Metatron. Metatron, if you are not familiar, is in charge of the Akashic records, the third eye, children, especially very, very sensitive children, teaching, learning. Did I miss something? I'm sure I did, but and the ascension process, okay? So you can work with Archangel Metatron. If that is uncomfortable for you, you don't have to. It's okay. Again, this is all very personal about what works for you. And remember, you don't need to be in a rush. As soon as somebody is trying to say, oh, you're not as ascended, you need to, I hear it all the time with the work that I do. My boyfriend hasn't caught up to me on my ascension path or whatever. Careful with that. That's the ego coming in there. This isn't a race. This isn't to put ourselves above other people. It's really meant to bring us together. Okay. So again, ascension is just rising up. You might have also heard, it's become like a mainstream saying. I can't wait for people years from now to come back and watch this and be like, oh my gosh, this is so dated. Saying that someone is so woke, right? So they're so woke. They're awakened. That's in the spiritual community, awakened is the big term, along with ascension. So it's ascending, it's awakening. I'm going through my awakening. I'm going through the next chapter of my awakening. And if you're new to this, again, it might make you feel kind of like left out. Like, what the heck? I thought I was, my eyes are open. Am I not awake? What does this mean? On the other end, if you've been at this for a while, you might hear people say, hey, I'm trying to get awakened. And you might feel for them, depending on what your own experience was. So we have a lot of different people watching this. That's why I'm kind of giving these, the whole spectrum of talk here. So we're going to get back into the basic information here for just a moment. If you have already been doing your ascension process for a while, this part might be a little bit boring for you, but whatever. All right. So let's say you're just getting started and you're hearing all this buzz and all this talk. The one thing I want to caution you against is making it trendy. This isn't a trend. This isn't a joke. This is something on your soul's path. It's part of your soul's journey. It's why your soul is in a physical body right here, right now. Okay, so basically, if you were alive they're showing me 2008, but especially of awareness, they're saying of awareness, and that I think that means of a certain age. So maybe you were already like 12 years old by the time 2012 came around. Okay, so but yeah, if you were old enough to understand what was going on in the world around 2008, 2012, this is where things really started, churning up. It's been going on for forever, but this is where things really started to come into the collective awareness, right? And this is where we start seeing more mainstream stuff where it's like cool to go to yoga and it's cool to, meditate. And that's wonderful. I want people to do that. Just make sure that it is not getting, as I said, trendy and it's not getting cheapened. Okay. Some of you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been to a yoga class, especially in a big city where everybody's turned that into a giant competition, right? Now we've stepped out of any sort of trying to work on our bodies for ascension. Okay. So be patient, right? It's going to start out very slowly, and I would encourage you to start out slowly and connecting with your spiritual team. I think this is the best way to plug into this process. Why go it alone? Why walk around in the dark and stub your toe 20 times before you're like, oh, hey, I've got guardian angels? Cool. Okay. So do that first. Call your guardian angels in. And some of you might be sitting here going, well, how do I do that? Okay. So meditation is one of the best ways to plug into your spiritual team and set the intention and say, okay, I'm ready to discover what I need to discover as an individual to start the process of ascending. Because truth be told, you've been doing it the whole time and you just didn't know it. Okay. So through all of your experiences, everything that you're learning, you are kind of raising your energy up. Okay. So you're going to connect into your spiritual team. You're going to spend time, especially every morning and every evening. This is going to be, you want to think of these as like your anchor points. Okay. So in the morning, start with a morning meditation, just connecting with your team. You don't have to do anything like crazy at first. And in the evening, something clearing, something that helps you feel very grounded, settled, okay? And just doing these activities and putting your heart into it, yes? That doesn't mean trying to do it perfectly, because you're not. Even people who've been meditating for forever, they're going to have days where they're distracted. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Think of it, if you have to, I'm oversimplifying it, but if you have to get you started, think of it as closing your eyes and breathing, okay? It doesn't have to get more complicated than that. And you'll find that your team comes forward and starts showing you things. All right, so this is where we get into some angel symbols, angel signs. Repeating numbers is a big one. Seeing feathers. I have, actually, if you guys want to understand kind of what my ascension process was, at least a piece of it, go find my Archangel Gabriel video on my channel, How I Met Archangel Gabriel, and that kind of explains what we're talking about here. So there was, for me, there were all these signs, like literally a sign that said angel, or feeling a message in my mind that I'm supposed to go look at this piece of paper, and I go ahead and I do it, and there's Archangel Gabriel there. There's a message about Gabriel. So some people, if they're kind of closed off or scared of opening up to this stuff, they might hear that and say, that's nuts. Are you out of your mind? Right? And I can understand that. As long as they're not getting evil with me, then we're cool. If you are where you are, that's fine. But what I don't tolerate, and I would encourage you not to tolerate, are people who come along to try to distract you, who try to drag you down. And specifically people who would say, that's crazy, that's nuts, what are you doing, whatever. Because they're going to be the ones later on who are going to come running after you when stuff is moving and shaking in the world and they're feeling unsettled, right? They're going to come running. I'm experiencing that myself now. All right, so you're going to do these meditations and you'll probably start seeing some signs. Try not to read into everything. Okay, remember, everything that we talk about here is with the assumption that you are completely approaching this in a balanced way. So if you feel like you're a little off your game, you're feeling a little out of balance, work on getting balanced. Archangel Sandalphon can help you with that, and especially in feeling grounded. He's actually the brother, or thought to be the brother, of Archangel Metatron, okay? So being grounded during your ascension process is key. You must do this. You will see tons of people. Again, this has been going on for a while now, so we're seeing they're not mistakes, but where people maybe took a wobbly way on the ascension path. And a lot of those people who got a little wobbly were the ones who were ungrounded. They wanted to treat ascension as a means to escape, right? And boy, did they talk the talk. I could sit here and tell you stories all the live long day about some of the things that I've heard people say. And then the actions that followed up behind that, which were not in alignment with any sort of beauty, grace, or God force energy. So be careful with that. Be careful with people who tell you, I can help you ascend, blah, blah, blah. I do readings for people. And that's, that takes my energy, and that's how I pay my bills. So, but that's different than me sitting here trying to scare you and going, you won't know how to ascend until you get a reading from me. Don't go to people like that, okay? That's nuts. And first of all, if they were ascended, they would never say that to you, okay? So some awareness about what you're coming into. If you're not familiar with the astral realm, this is something that spiritual practitioners often talk about, or maybe they deal with. And the idea is that the astral realm, I'm putting this in simplest terms, has a whole bunch of different kinds of souls in there. That's why they say do it with caution, because you can get some, questionable energies coming at you. But, for what people kind of describe the astral realm as, I feel like that is also playing out on the earth plane, where you have these people who are trying to say, I am a spiritual teacher, but they don't have good intentions. Or I'm here to help you, but really they just want to take your money. Okay. Why am I going through that? It's an important point because you're going to be perhaps a little vulnerable. This might be new territory for you. And when you feel like you got thrown into the pool in the deep end, right? And someone is, being kind of lazy and just dipping their toe in and being like, you want this life ring? You want this? You want? I'll give it to you. It's going to cost you. Remember, you can learn how to swim. Take it easy, and you will be able to do that for yourself. Again, what if you're saying, yeah, but that's contradictory to what you just said. Like, why do people get readings? I do that. I do readings for people who usually they can get reading, or they can read their own energy. They can get messages for themselves, but they might be in a state of mind where they're not in the energy to fully understand it. So I'm here, to try to be interpreter or to give a new perspective. And also, when people get readings from me, I try to make sure that I reflect back things that maybe they've become numb to. You know what I'm saying? Again, that fresh perspective. But it's kind of nice to have somebody take care of you for a second. You know what I mean? So that's that. Again, I want to really differentiate that from some other approaches of, oh, you're never going to ascend in time. If you give me $2,000, I'll light this candle for you and your whole life will be good. You get what I'm saying. Okay. So as you're going on this process, you might discover that some weird stuff is happening in your life. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go 5 steps to know that you're ascending, because I could, but it's basically been done. So it's already on YouTube. You don't need me to tell you. You can just go find that. But let's go a little deeper with that discussion. So you might first find that you see life in a different way, right? For some people, they might start to feel a little raw, a little sensitive. I am one of those spiritual practitioners that says, if you start to hit the mental body, and most people do, they hit the mental body usually before they hit the spiritual body, go get help. There's no shame in contacting a therapist, a psychiatrist, because one of the things that can happen with ascension is depression and anxiety. It's your body and your energy body, let's say, trying to shift and get going into this other direction. So that can come for some people with a little bit of short circuiting, okay? So extreme self-care, super imperative here as well. So we also have Archangel Chamuel to introduce to you if you don't already know who that is. Archangel Chamuel helps with self-love, and she's known as the Archangel of Love, but be careful trying to attract in love just yet, okay? Make sure you are fully in that self-care and that self-love. So what does that mean? That means if you need to, let's say you're at work and you're going through your ascension process and you're feeling like you're a little like, I don't know why this is happening, things are getting crazy. If it's hitting the mental body, contact a therapist. They are licensed to help you with that sort of thing. But also just having some awareness and some patience with yourself. That means you have to take a moment and step into a conference room. Let's, again, go with the example of someone who's in an office building. Try to sneak into a conference room for 2 to 3 minutes. Just close your eyes and feel yourself get grounded, okay? Remember, your team is with you. And you don't need to be anywhere special. Heck, I used to sit at my desk, especially when I was, well, let me share this with you. So I was sitting at my desk at an office job years ago, and I started to feel like I was being pulled off center. Now, this was a little bit scary. I now know, because I've seen how things have developed, I now know what was happening. Now, there are some psychiatric conditions, some disorders and mental illness or whatever that can also cause that same kind of effect. Please take care of yourselves. All right. Don't explain everything away. Oh, it's ascension. No, there are people on this earth. Remember, their souls are traveling with your soul. So they're here to help you. May as well get the help, right? And that goes as we get into the physical symptoms here. It goes with doctors as well. Okay. Don't just explain, oh, this pain in my chest and the shortness of breath, that's ascension symptoms. No, that might be, God forbid, a heart attack. God forbid. Get to a doctor. Do you know what I'm saying? All right. So let's go back to, you might start to feel like you're short circuiting. Some people do tend to feel like maybe they're a little more short tempered. Some people have described being in a fog. For me, it might have been a little bit different because I I was coming onto my path to be an angel medium. So it just felt busy. It just felt really busy. And I felt exhausted. So exhaustion is another pretty big thing. But again, if you are feeling fatigued, make sure you check with a doctor. Don't explain it away. All right. And I'll have an example of that to share with you here in a moment. So if you do start to feel fatigued, short-tempered, depression, anxiety, I know I'm making it sound like Ascension's terrible. Why would anybody do this? It's a call to duty. This is what we're here for, and we can't go on in the old way, okay? And we can get into a really deep discussion about some of the theories about why Ascension needs to happen anyway, but we're being asked to basically graduate and come to the next level. So as your frequency raises, as we were talking about some of these symptoms, you know, your physical body is going to start perhaps feeling those effects as well. And the idea is that the frequency within your body, or the frequency of your energetic body within your physical body, the physical body needs to adjust. What are some common symptoms? Sore teeth. I know, sore teeth. Headaches, that's a big one. Backaches, anything where you feel like your spine is a little wonky. You know what I'm saying? Because your chakra system, the battery pack, basically for your physical body, it's straighten up time. Okay, everybody get charged up. And if you're not really ready for that, you know, that can bring a little bit of pain. And sore muscles. Again, always go see a doctor first. I cannot say that enough. Go see a doctor. This is where I'll give you a couple of examples. Having teeth pains when I was going through my little process, having all this teeth pain. I go in to my poor dentist and I'm describing all this and he's like, okay, we're going to get you x-rays. Michelle, I'm sorry. I think we're going to have to give you a root canal. That doesn't sound good. Okay, but you know, let's get the x-rays. He gets their x-rays. He puts them up and I'm sitting there like in the chair, like with the little thing behind my head, like, oh, what are we going to say? Cause I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. It all looks gross to me, like whatever. And he's like, there was nothing. He said, I can't find anything. Your teeth, your gums, everything's perfect. And I'll never forget his face. He just sat there like so amazed and could not believe it. And he looked back at me and goes, but you were describing so much pain. And I was like, it hurts. That's why I was describing the pain, because it hurts. So he ended up not knowing what to do. And I honestly looked a little nuts. But there was another time, as far as physical symptoms, I gave you kind of the etheric symptoms with sitting at the desk and feeling like I was getting kind of like pulled in distortion a little bit. That was me tuning up. But another physical thing that I had was I was having these horrible digestive issues. So digestion might be a little hard to take. Because another thing with Ascension is in order for you to ascend, there could be things that you need to complete out, some lessons that you need to finish up, and then it feels like everything's up in your face. And it's like, oh, that's why some people describe this ascension process as feeling like everything fell apart before. But everything that falls apart or goes out of your life, it needs to, okay? It's a good thing. So anyway, if you start to have digestive problems too, that might be a part of it where you're having a hard time digesting what's happening. So I started having all these problems, and mine did involve, again, always go see a doctor. What's that now? Go see a doctor, okay? But I was feeling heart palpitations. I was getting sharp pains in my chest, digestive problems. So I go in to my doctor in New York City. She was amazing. I miss her. I love her. I now live in Colorado Springs, so I don't get to see her anymore. But I'm telling her my symptoms, and she goes, that's a gallbladder attack. Okay, listen, I'm going to set you up for a sonogram, but we need to talk, okay? Because do you have somebody who can drive you to and from a hospital? This is going to be surgery. You need to call your insurance. You know, she's really going through everything that's going to happen. Pre-surgery, post-surgery, like all these things. There's an airplane going by, sorry. I'm near an Air Force base. That doesn't happen all the time, but there you go. Anyway, so I go and I get this sonogram. I'm a good girl. I go to my follow-up doctor's appointment, and she's sitting there, and she's like, hold on a second. She goes out the door to confirm. I could hear her outside. She was like confirming that this was actually my sonogram, my x-ray or whatever. And she comes back in and she goes, I've never had this happen before. I don't know what to make of this. There's nothing wrong with your gallbladder. Your gallbladder is beautiful. It's perfect. I don't know what's going on here. And it's kind of sad to watch the doctors try to figure this stuff out, because a lot of them, they're not into this stuff. And I would never sit there. I mean, me personally, you can do whatever you want, but me personally, I wouldn't be like, I knew it was Ascension. Right? But I'm just sitting there watching her. She was really stressed that she couldn't figure out, or that she was wrong. Maybe that's why she was more stressed, that she ended up being so wrong. Liver was fine. Total digestive tract. Everything was looking good. Gallbladder was healthy, you know, everything. And, she got to the point of saying, well, you need to go to a cardiologist. And I was like, for what? Like, do you think there's something wrong with my heart? She goes, no, I thought it was, you know, she was, you know, she thought it was my gallbladder, but she was talking about it could be esophageal, something, you know, whatever. So long story short, I had these two symptoms, these two physical symptoms, went to go to a doctor, and it ended up not being anything. Okay. But it's an important step to make sure you can check that off first, that it's nothing physical. Let's go back to the psychology of it a little bit too, because as I was giving that example of feeling kind of off center, I remember I went in to therapy because, you know, I was feeling a little out of sorts and feeling a little, you know, and as I was sitting there, I look back on this now and I'm like, how did I not know? As I was sitting there, I would feel myself start to almost like I was, hang with me again, this is a little weird, like I was time hopping. Or I now call it dimension hopping. So people call it past lives. I think we're all existing in several places at once, and you hop from story to story at times. And as I'm sitting there and I'm trying to talk to her about what's going on, all of a sudden I'd feel like this distortion, and it was like I was in another time and place. So many people are going to watch this on the internet, and they're going to be like, this woman, oh, yeah, I'll see you when it happens to you, and then we'll see who's crazy, okay? But I remember sitting there with the therapist, and it was almost as if I had fallen asleep for a moment, but I was off into a different place, a different time, and then I'd come back to her, and she'd be looking at me, and she'd be like, what just happened? And I'd be like, I don't know. I like snapped out, and I went over, nothing, nothing, I'm fine, don't put me away. You know, like, oh God. But she was actually pretty open-minded about this stuff. And, you know, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, do I need to go into the hospital? What's happening? And she said, you know, some people believe that these are spiritual things that are happening. And I remember at the time I was like, I'm not into that. Haha, look at what happened from there, you know? So if you start to feel like you're losing your mind, or you find that you aren't resonating with certain people anymore, certain life goals. This is another big one, right? So depending on where you are in life, even if you're 20 and you're going through this can still feel or mimic some of the things that people experience with a midlife crisis, okay? A little different. It'll feel deeper and maybe a little foggier and a little bit like, I don't know what's happening. I'm a little spacey right now. I'm just gonna, you know. So if you have any of like the lightheadedness, of course, be careful. This is no joke. Be careful behind the wheel, okay? So if you were feeling a little lightheaded, pull off somewhere safe, give yourself a chance, connect back into the breath, get yourself grounded, because this is part of that expanded energy. There's DNA activation. You know, there are all these things that you haven't lived your full potential yet, right? So you're getting to the place where you can, at least for whatever that potential is defined by at this time. Does that make sense? So I'm giving you a lot, I know, and I did say this is going to be very conversational because I can respect that people give the lists, and I know you might be hungry for one of those lists right now, but I will tell you, you know, that's only going to give you part of the story, okay? We need to have these discussions about what to expect. Okay, so sleepiness is another one. You might find that you have to sleep for lots and lots and lots of time. Books, and like I was kind of going into like goals, dreams, books that you used to like. Maybe you're not doing that so much anymore. It's okay. All right, you're changing. And if you're like, I don't want to change, all right, well then to keep buying the whatever books. You know, you can. Nobody says you can't. I mean, you can, but you might find naturally that you're not gravitating towards those kinds of things anymore. Okay, wanting to be out in nature. This is another big one. And I want to give a little bit of word of caution here because I do live in Colorado. And I hear people, because they think this makes them spiritual, or they've heard spiritual people talk like, oh, I just need to get grounded, connected into nature. They will go out and go, oh, I'm being spiritual. See me, I'm out hiking. And then they come across a rattlesnake or a mountain lion and they're like, what? So always respect Mother Nature. Do not, you know, you don't own nature. So make sure you know what you're getting into before you get out there, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, be very, very respectful. I can't say it enough. Ascension is not a game. This is not a parade. This isn't a party. It's deep soul level work. It's you finding your way back to God and opening up an even deeper expression of God, source, creator within you, right? So if you come upon people who are, and you'll see, just look all over YouTube, okay? They're everywhere. They're everywhere. I'm going to do an ascension reading, which in and of itself, I shouldn't mock it because maybe they're a good person and maybe they're really doing it. But there are some that are not doing it for the right reasons, okay? And that's why I keep saying, be careful, all right? You know, oh, these are the energies that you're contending with and oh, you know, all this stuff. If you can find good people who really understand what you're going through, and they're not trying to set themselves above or apart from others who aren't going through that, they're not trying to make a club out of it, then a support system is good. A popular thing that people love talking about is this thing, you know, we refer to it as our tribe. And that's a wonderful, beautiful thing, to find your tribe, to find your soul family. But I feel like it's what people are doing with it. I think people are wanting it to be so much that they're contriving it in their heads. And essentially what ends up happening is they end up in these meditation groups where the person who's heading it might actually be working with some dark energy and might have, and it's not to scare you, it's to make you smarter about what you're experiencing. If I can share my experiences and you don't have to go through it, then let's go that path, right? So just be careful what you get involved with. You don't have to join a meditation group in order to ascend. Your ascension is gonna happen, all right? But they're coming through and they're saying judgment. Talk about judgment. Make sure as you are going through this process that you are not judging others. You're not woke. Ew. Well, as I always say, as soon as somebody says, I'm wiser than you, or you're just not as ascended as me, they're already out of their wisdom. Okay? And I can't help but every time I hear that stuff, and again, I hear it a lot given the work that I do and the industry that I'm in, my big comeback for that is, but did you levitate? If you did, do it again. Let me see it, right? And even then, you got to be careful because there are illusionists out there. And I don't mean the guys in Vegas, okay? There are lots of people who can make themselves seem like they got all the answers and like they're special. Okay? Okay. So what else can we tell you about Ascension? It's going to change your life. Ascension comes in chapters. Ascension can involve your pineal gland opening. This is not to be toyed with. This is not to be messed with. I will share a story with you in just a moment. But that's essentially what it is. And don't think that you're off the hook once you go through it once. You're going to go through a little bit. Again, there might be some confusion, feeling like you got to move from another place. It doesn't happen that way for everybody. It might be very internal for some people, okay? Where they don't change their location, they don't change their job, they don't get out of a love partnership, they don't dump friends. Don't dump your friends. If they're growing apart, then that's one thing. But make sure you're not doing, again, that judgment thing where it's like, you're not woke, and so I can't be with you or whatever. Okay. So let's go back to it happening in stages. So you're going to acclimate to one stage, and you might find that you plateau. And this is interesting because I often have people coming to me to get readings because they feel like the angels have stopped talking to them or that they're not doing like they're not doing enough work. Do you know what I'm saying? Because things are just kind of chill. They're acclimating. And that is a time that you should really embrace it and have a lot of gratitude. Have a lot of gratitude for the whole process. But don't feel like you have to be striving every second of every day. That is human ego consciousness training, okay? That thing that says when you work hard, you get good output, right? Life is not formulaic. It is not formulaic. I'll say that 20,000 times. It's not formulaic, okay? It's free-flowing. It's messy. And that's how your best creativity is going to remain unlocked and flowing to create this next kind of life within a world that is also ascending. Gaia is also ascending. The earth is ascending. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of distortion in our world as well. Not like distortion wasn't there before, but it's going to amp up. It's going to get very fast, okay? So there's that as well. So you'll feel that kind of, that plateau that we keep talking about, and then you might get hit with another stage. And this is where you might experience whole other symptoms, okay? One of them that they're popping in here reminding me to tell you about is time. The concept of time. Time is not linear outside of this human construct, okay? So this might be a speeding up of time. I had moments where I'd be sitting there. For me, it was like this inexplicable fatigue and tiredness, a sleepiness. And I'd be sitting there and all of a sudden I'm just like out. And it wasn't drifting off into sleep. It was like I'm awake and I'm out. And I, wake up thinking that 2 minutes passed and 2 hours passed. All right. So careful with that. Again, with Archangel Sandalphon, you can remain very, very grounded. If you want to work with Archangel Metatron, we mentioned him from the beginning. He does help with ascension, sacred geometry. That's a big one that I forgot. He's in charge of sacred geometry, and basically the what kind of formulates the universe, right? What's the mathematical equation behind the universe? So if you want to work with Archangel Metatron, Metatron might have you have these little sort of like, teachable moments or little aha moments, or a lesson might pop up in front of you. Now, if you run away, it's going to find you again. So just get through it, okay? You don't want to go through it times 10 later on. But there's a speeding up, perhaps a speeding up of time that can occur where it's Monday, now it's Sunday. A whole week has gone by and you're like, what? Right? You might also find that this isn't everybody, but if this does occur, I want you to know that you're not alone. This might make some people want to isolate. So be careful with that. We want you to remain healthy and balanced. But if you feel like you need to take some alone time, nothing wrong with that. You might also find that some people just are aggravated by you. And you might be like, what? What did I do to you? You could be standing there doing nothing and somebody's getting aggravated with you. It's because you're vibrating at a different frequency than maybe they are. And that happens all the time anyway, but this is maybe a little more contrast that you are experiencing. Okay? So there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on here with this, but in total, does it have to be a bad thing? No, it can be an absolutely wonderful experience. You might have some very vivid dreams. You might find that you suddenly do feel your heart opening. I was talking about the pineal gland opening. So let me just, while we're on that topic, I was at the Chopra Center on Broadway in New York City. It's no longer open, but I remember I kept going by and they had a storefront that had all the incense, and every time I walked by, it just seemed so out of place. This Chopra Center with all this incense and all that wafting out onto Broadway, amongst the rats, the roaches, the piles of trash on the street, and it's Broadway, so like the Broadway shows and the lights and all that stuff. I remember every time I came off the subway, I would go by the store, and I was very intrigued by what I saw in there, but I was too intimidated to go in. I was going through a lot of stuff in my life at that time, so as was my solution to everything, book a massage. Which turns out is actually something that's very good for you. And especially if you're going through an ascension process, get the massages, or do some Ayurvedic massage, because moving the stagnant energy in your body is going to help you. It's going to relieve some of the symptoms and some of the things that you might come up against. So I book a massage, and great massage. I'm really sad the place closed. Doesn't matter. I don't live in New York anyway. But anyway, so I'm in there getting my massage, and the woman is holding my head. So she's standing at my head, and she's kind of cradling, she's kind of, working my neck back and forth. I'm like, oh, that's life. Oh, that's money. Like, yes, having a good time. And she says to me, do you mind if I meditate with you? I'm like, with me? Was I meditating? I wasn't. But I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Just keep rubbing my head and whatever you got to do. So she starts breathing, and I can hear her breath, and it took no time whatsoever. I saw a bright flash. I saw an image of what I know now is Ganesh. This is a ridiculous story. I'll get to it. Like super vibrant color, and he swooped up to my face. So it was like trunk to nose, right? And he's just looking at me. And then there was another flash, and I jolted straight up on the table. Now think of this. If you're going to jolt, you usually shoot up, or you might wobble to the side and almost fall off the table. I went right up into my poor masseuse, right into her belly. Just shot right up and hit her. And she knew exactly what was happening. And she put one hand over my heart and one hand over my forehead. And she held me and she just kept breathing. After a few seconds, she said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes." Okay. So she finished she finished the massage. I go out into the little loungy room or whatever, got my robe on, and she hands me this like spa water. And I'm like, freaking out in my head. I'm not going to talk to anybody about this, but I am totally having a moment, right? And so she comes up to me and she's like, "Do you want to talk about what happened?" I'm like, "No, nothing happened. What do you mean?" "No, I'm fine." Drinking my spa water. So she goes on. I go out to the spa front, or the storefront, the storefront. And the woman who's behind the counter is smiling at me. And I'm just like too intimidated to ask about anything. And then I see a statue of Ganesh sitting there. And I kind of stopped and I couldn't help it. I'm like, "Who's this guy?" And she's like, she didn't know who I was talking about. I'm like, "The guy with the trunk? Who is that?" And she laughed and she explained, and we started talking. And by the time I'm walking out, I've got a fistful of incense and some crystals. Don't know what the heck I'm going to do with either one of them. Just found out about Ganesh, right? And honestly, that was one of those pivotal moments for me because my pineal gland had opened. Now, I can describe that. Oh God, I shouldn't laugh. Be careful when you're opening your pineal gland. Not only are you opening yourself up to a wider vision, okay, and you may not be ready to see what you see, but physically, it can really knock you. Like if you were sitting on or laying on a bed, it could have knocked me into a headboard. You can knock yourself out trying to ascend. I'm kidding. You'll be fine. But, just be mindful of that. I would, do what's comfortable for you, or hey, it's between you, God, and your team about how fast your pineal gland pops open. But if you want to take it little by little, you can always do that as well. But for me, there was that fogginess. There was really it was like being in a Salvador Dali painting. Like everything was like it was zooming in and then zooming back out. It was weird. And I really had to take a second to get grounded. And it was funny because the incense, I remember that they gave me, I didn't realize this at the time, but now I know it was very grounding kind of incense because I must have been like, woo. So there was that time. And then there was another time at home where I was doing a meditation with Archangel Gabriel, and another moment like that happened. So again, even your pineal gland opening, that can happen in stages, right? So overall, is ascension a scary thing? No. Is it going to happen? Yep. You better get on board because, you don't need to worry about your loved ones who may not be ready. Everybody is on their own journey. It'll happen when it needs to happen. It'll happen in the way that it needs to happen. So what we've talked about here, these are some of the more extreme symptoms, experiences, stories, right, that you could experience. But not everybody goes through all of that, right? But they are telling me right now what they want you to know is that you might feel extreme exhaustion. So please make sure that you are feeding yourself well. This is not that's the other thing. Thank you. They're saying that forget about your fried foods and stuff, okay? Especially if you're coming into the next chapter of an ascension, it's not going to work for you. Bad food's not going to work, right? Watch alcohol intake, and also watch anything that helps you escape. So you'll be more sensitive to television, movies. Escapism also comes through escaping within an individual. Okay, maybe you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who just acts as a distraction because you're so in love with them. Remember, you got to love yourself as well. Come on back in. This would also, this kind of goes without saying, but don't lean on any kind of substance to help you get through. I know some people do ayahuasca as part of their ascension and part of their awakening, but that should be done with a trained, first of all, make your own decisions about that. Make sure you're healthy enough to do all of that, and make sure that you are with a shaman, someone who knows how to administer. Don't take any of that lightly. That's, you got to be very careful with that. But outside of that, I would be careful of trying to self-medicate. remember, you don't need to do that. There's always help. There's always support. Okay. But I have heard people who have reported that their ascension process, I guess maybe because they were so ready. Remember, I went into my ascension going, I don't know anything. I don't know what, who's Ganesh? What's an angel? Like, honest to God, if you had asked me to name an angel, I might have been able to come up with Archangel Gabriel. But I didn't even remember that Gabriel was with the Annunciation. I didn't know that. I should have, but I forgot. Okay. So I really didn't know much about angels at all. So if you're kind of coming into it with already some base knowledge, and maybe you've already been meditating, maybe you're already very connected to source, maybe you don't just go through, maybe let's say you're religious and you don't just go through the motions, but you do really connect in your heart. Then you might not have such a bad time. You might be really ready. The stuff that comes up, be like, oh, I'm ready to forgive that. Let that go. Forgiveness is going to play into this quite a bit. Okay. You're going to be faced with a lot of stuff that you're going to have to get past. Right. But it's a cleansing, and it's very cathartic. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And speaking of cleansing, I should go back to another physical symptom. Maybe this is why people like lists. I have been all over the place, and I'm not sorry, because this is your ascension, honey. I'm getting you prepared for it. This is how it's going to be, right? It's going to be all over the place. Vomiting. I forgot to mention that some people do vomit or have things exit the other way fast and furiously. So not to get too graphic, but be aware of that as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to tune in. Let's see if there's anything else from the archangels or the angels that you would need to know at this time. They're saying that all of us are doing this, where we're going from a stage. Remember I said there's almost like dimension hopping, and I had been doing that a little bit. All of us are kind of doing that. We're kind of all like, oh, we're just going to move over to this line here. But that's going to be a bit of a process still. We can leave no one behind. So even if you go on your ascension process, and let's say somebody incarnated and they're not intending to even start this process until 30 years from now, I don't care how long somebody has been on their ascension path, they're going to have to wait for their brothers and sisters on their timeline so we can all come together. We all cross the bridge, or however you want to see this, we all come into this other kind of energy together. So that's another pretty big sign, and they're letting me know this right now, that if you come across somebody who's like, oh, I'm already in fifth dimensional energy, I already exist in fifth dimension. But did you levitate? Remember that. Use it. It's good. It throws them off. They don't know what to do with it. Even if they claim that they're already in that energy, and let's say they are, you left all your brothers and sisters behind. You weren't supposed to do that. So, again, be careful. So I feel good. They're saying that's a good start. So maybe there'll be a part 2. I don't know. We'll see what they want to bring through. But that should at least get you started. If you have questions about Ascension, please leave them down below. If I get enough of the same kinds of questions, okay, I can make a part 2 or whatever you want to talk about. This can be an open discussion. So you let me know what kind of content you want around this, and I'll make it happen for you. All right? I am sending you all so much love, and take care.